Welcome. This keynote will be on minding the gap between research and industry practice. And I'll have examples both from large industry and also from startups. Hey, differential privacy, what were you all waiting for? I will not describe that for this audience. I will kind of highlight that many of the examples I'll be pulling from are specific to differential privacy. And that is because a lot of my observations in the industry and a lot of the challenges that I've encountered have been attempting to apply this specific technology. So this talk will be a background on the gap, and then we'll talk about mechanisms for reducing that gap between research and practice. And I'll include a personal story from the launch of Alexa's HIPAA eligibility launch, or Alexa's HIPAA eligibility, and some other examples of industry success and struggles with differential privacy, and how this aligns with some of the major SOUPS accomplishments. As for more information about me, I'm a career big tech software engineer with focuses on AI and privacy, including ML explainability and PETs. And I'm a startup investor, including in some privacy startups. But the other way you could describe me is I am a pepper guy, through and through. That is to say, I'm a veteran of the sister conference of SOUPS that is focused on industry practitioners. And if you don't know PEPPER, it stands for Privacy Engineering, Practice, and Respect. I built software and services throughout my career with a focused obsession over landing customer impact. So when I was offered the opportunity to give a keynote at SOUPS, I viewed it as an opportunity to highlight long-standing challenges I've observed and highlight potential improvements between the research and practice communities. And what do you get when you combine peppers and soup? You get a very spicy soup, and I hope this talk delivers to that. Apologies to Lori if she's here. Okay. You might have prepared this joke for, I don't know, since 2005, and I hope you've used it since then. Okay, so let's kick it off with an audience poll. So if you don't mind raising your hand if you have partnered with industry in your work. Okay, awesome, thank you. Please keep your hands up. Of those people who have partnered, how many would claim that they had at least initial success? That would be something like launching a feature or publishing a paper or something to that effect. Okay, most of the hands are still up. And how many people would say that they had long-term success after, say, 3 years? Okay, just saw a bunch of hands go down. And how many people had success over, say, a 5-year time frame? Anyone still have their hands up? I think, okay, awesome. So congratulations if you still had your hand up. That is impeccably hard to do. So success, particularly over a very long time, can look very different. So here is a slide that basically shows a bullseye generated by AI, demonstrating that you can go through short-term, medium-term, and long-term success all perfectly. I think in practice, this is incredibly hard to do. And I will show you a story about what that looks like in practice. So this is the HIPAA eligibility launch. So let me pull my notes up. Okay, so in 2019, I was the principal engineer for Alexa's launch as the world's first HIPAA-eligible voice assistant. So this would entail making an always-on voice assistant eligible to process data under the national standards in the US, defined with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. The most interesting part, at least from an engineering perspective, was implementation of the privacy rule. And this protects protected health information, or PHI, when a signed legal agreement exists between a medical provider, also called a covered entity, and a data partner, which is also called a business associate. We launched successfully. We enjoyed a strong press and industry reaction. Our team inside of Amazon got good review scores for launching a flagship goal for Amazon's devices organization. It was also humorous to see how many reactions to the launch that indicated the average consumer doesn't understand the protections provided by HIPAA, And this would all be seen across the internet once the COVID pandemic hit and people were misbelieving what HIPAA actually does. However, all was not well. So 3.5 years later, the launch would go backwards. And I may have a sound effect. There we go. So yeah, the HIPAA eligibility was rolled back for third-party partners. So this means that while we shipped something that was good and it lasted 3.5 years out in the wild, it was not meant to go any farther. So for the good, the bad, and the ugly of that launch. That's awesome. Couldn't have planned it better. Okay, the good. So the initial launch with was with 6 skill partners, and that was moderate success. We had a variety of healthcare partners. This included large medical insurers like Cigna, large hospitals like Boston Children's, and some of the tech-savvy medical device companies like Livongo, which does like blood monitoring, for example. And we have a clean record on the breach notification rule. So this was the single most important launch guideline, which was don't compromise our customers' PHI data. And there's mandatory reporting under the HIPAA wall of shame that you can go and see all the HIPAA partners who have breach data of that type. And the other good thing I would call out is this enabled the use of Alexa in COVID wards during the pandemic. This was actually true for all consumer electronics because there was a suspension of penalties during the COVID pandemic in order to kind of have all hands on deck and use as much good technology as possible in places like the COVID wards. And the idea here was we could reduce reliance on provider personal protection equipment during room visits and maybe improve the quality of care. On the bad, the user experience was completely lackluster. So if you said, ask Livongo for my current blood sugar, Livongo could do that for you. But it's a very cumbersome thing to remember, say, the name of the skill. And if you don't remember the name of the skill or something, you might have 2 skills that can support that. There's other problems with just being a voice device. So when we launched, we knew about that. We knew that it was going to get better sometime in the future. However, the initial press that you make, an initial splash, is ever so important. We never saw better than, say, middling adoption beyond the initial launch partners. Part of that was due to high friction, which is just innate with HIPAA. So HIPAA does involve a signed agreement, and that means your lawyers, both sides have lawyers, and oftentimes they want to redline and negotiate, and that's one way that they prove their value. But it makes it harder to scale up. And in general, product market fit was never proven. And this is the single biggest challenge with startups. It might still be the single biggest challenge with a even big tech company. So product market fit is the art of taking a product and finding a market that needs that product and is going to use that product and embrace that product and grow use of that product. So that's product market fit. Startups in general are looking to establish product market fit. But for this launch, was it ever really there? No, because it wasn't like this perpetual motion machine that you want to see that can cause growth. And for the ugly, so what was it, late 2022, I think it was, Alexa shifted away from being a strategic investment center within Amazon to having a very big investment number behind it that needed to get smaller. And this, of course, led to cost cutting. So this impacted the HIPAA eligibility feature, as I mentioned. But unfortunately, I had also spun up internally a differential privacy research team, which was doing great work. They had basically been working on HIPAA-grade de-identification of unstructured text, and doing that under the statistical expert method that's kind of defined in HIPAA, which says if you bring a statistical expert and they say that the data is anonymized, then the data is anonymized. So really tangible, good progress made towards that. That was lost. And I understand this decision was later regretful as LLMs, very quickly came out of the scene out of nowhere. And this was still a team that was needed. Yeah, so lasting impact is what we're all looking to do. When SOUPS is at its best, we do create a lasting impact. And the question becomes, how do we do better? So I went through quite a few impacts of various SOUPS notes. I know sometimes SOUPS is first and sometimes SOUP is kind of like a leading or lagging indicator. But if I was to put together a Hall of Fame for my keynote of impacts in the last 5 years that were lasting, I came up with these 3. The first I'd want to call out is passkeys. Actually, if you're here and you worked on these things, feel free to stand up. It's probably a chance to get recognized randomly. So what happened here is, okay, no one's here. The UX guidelines mentioned for passkeys and WebAuthn have influenced major tech companies and their passkey rollouts and contributed to the FIDO Alliance recommendations. And we're seeing that 2025 is probably a breakthrough year when it comes to passkeys, and it's now becoming a mainstream authentication method. So congrats, nice work. Next is research on dark patterns. And I love this example, as I've observed that industry will proceed with the best performing experiment in an A/B test and not always ask, well, why was that the best performing A/B test? And when you forget to ask that question, even a well-intentioned actor can sometimes introduce a dark pattern, which has an unanticipated side effect, how do you say? But the research here has been cited both by the US FTC and the EU Digital Services Act, and in 2 high visibility settlements involving dark patterns. The last Hall of Fame entry is privacy nutritional labels, which has delivered transparency to many opaque privacy concepts like cross-app and cross-website tracking. I just love to see more in this area, as there are still too many websites and services that have wall of text privacy policies that we could make more actionable in the era of LLMs. And in keeping with our theme on differential privacy, here's the top 3 impacts I was able to grab from the previous 5 SOUPs when it comes to DP. The first is that we have suggestions on how to approach DP from a usability perspective. That is how to explain epsilon, how metaphors help or mislead, and how developer tooling affects adoption. I also love how this work crosses cultures, and that knowledge is very useful when building global software. The second is developer-facing tool usability. This work demonstrates that DP adoption is limited by poor tooling and documentation, just as much as theoretical complexity. And I've also observed that inside of tech companies, outside of a very few select individuals, these privacy concepts are hard for everyone and often foreign for everyone. Good work there as well. The third is practical skepticism of simple visual UX hacks for local DP. This paper looked at things like, does a spinner, help make local DP more understandable or less, and finds that it's often less. So let's look at how industry is faring on the same DP concept. We'll look at 3 examples here beyond the Amazon one, and that is Meta, Google, and Tumult Labs, with Tumult Labs being the startup of the bunch. So here's a stock chart. I'm sure the people who were presenting earlier from Meta recognize it. If you look carefully here, you'll see that basically in late 2022, the stock price had crashed to a level not seen since January 2016. Does anyone remember what might have been happening to Meta during that time to cause such a crash? No, that was a bunch of years before, I would say. It happens to be Apple's app tracking transparency feature. So what happened here was a lot of the data that Meta relies upon for tracking conversions across its advertising campaigns were no longer possible to access because Apple was choosing to provide visibility to what happens with advertising across the internet, and users were choosing to opt out when they had the opportunity to that feature. Not necessarily a good outcome for Meta, and it, I think, shortly caused a existential risk to Meta's business model. May have been on the wrong slide there, but that's okay. So Meta rebounds plus 800% after that's resolved. And what happened there? Three things, as I can glean from public information. Meta rebuilt ad measurement with privacy-preserving tech. So there's three things that happened there. There was aggregation and event management. There was private lift measurement, so privacy-preserving lift measurement possible. And these used various combinations of differential privacy, aggregation, secure multi-party computation to measure conversions. In parallel, in an all-hands-on-deck type approach, machine learning was used. So this used on-device and server-side AI models to infer any missing data. So when the data went away, maybe a model can make an educated guess on what that data would be, even if that data is not present. And when you're gifted at a place like Meta's scale of users, these models can be pretty smart about finding similar users and inferring what that data might be. This is also trained on aggregated data and differential privacy. And the public commitment was made to ads without using cross-app identifiers. This is really the only public part. This is really just something that happened to Meta, and Meta responded internally successfully and kept their business running. So this is what I think DP success looks like. For less successful implementations, we can look at the Google Privacy Sandbox. I believe this audience is already quite familiar with this based upon some hallway conversations. But this was meant to Google's attempt at providing an alternative to third-party cookies to continue to support advertising and kind of looking at a pragmatic approach to the problem. So saying okay, we can be better than cookies. We can still provide good targeted advertising and still track things like conversions that our online advertising models need. This was done primarily through two places. One is an attribution reporting API. This took aggregated data and provided differential privacy on top of it. And then there was a topics API. This had several privacy-preserving technologies inside of it, but the major one was K-anonymization based upon categories. So any user could represent a few categories at a point in time. And those categories would shift over time. So the Privacy Sandbox challenges this wasn't necessarily a great outcome for anyone involved with the technology. So first off, if you look at our users, we represent our users and we want them to be resilient to privacy and re-identification risks. However, the technology was not resilient to re-identification. In one study, attackers could uniquely identify users with up to 15 to 17% accuracy among 1,000 profiles, and more as data accumulated over time. That's an unfortunate side effect of the word pragmatic, which will affect any DP deployment. Another reproducible analysis found re-identification risks rise sharply over time. That was actually 57% of users re-identified after 15 observation epochs, and 75% of users re-identified after 30, which undermined the API's promise. So number two, publishers and ad tech players raised objections. So signals from topics often lacked the detail or immediacy needed for effective ad targeting. Some advertisers saw a 33% drop in CPMs as a result, and expressed concern that this system favored Google-backed tools. And the third concern came from regulators, particularly the UK's Competition and Markets Authority, which cautioned that Google's privacy sandbox could reinforce its dominance in ad tech, just by taking something that's wild in the cookie and moving it behind an API. Privacy sandbox is no more. We'll see what comes next. I'm sure it's not the end. Okay, and our next example is Tumult Labs. So this is what I view as like the most promising differential privacy startup that has, I think, occurred since differential privacy was a modern thing. Elevator pitch is it's DP made easy. It's founded by an excellent team with some of the best in the industry or best in academia, and notably who had interacted with quite a bit of the US Census work that happened with the last census. We have a startup created from a bunch of gifted individuals, yet Tumult struggled to convert DP into signed contracts. Not much is known on the specifics publicly of why Tumult chose to become acqui-hired. Acqui-hired is a somewhat happy outcome for a startup. It means everyone got to keep their job. Everyone is paid well at a big company like Apple in this case. But does it mean that the startup got to become the next Google or whatnot? No, it's kind of a happy failure case. One of the things that is hinted is that many customers requested customization of their differential privacy, primarily because they needed to extract as much utility as possible from their differential privacy implementation. And that, to me, was an indicator that there's not much appetite when it comes to product market fit for true general purpose DP. But generally, we do want customization when deploying differential privacy. I had that for Google too, so we have to use it twice. Okay, so the industry is struggling. So these examples across Google, Tumult, and Amazon indicate our struggles with product market fit. And the success example was primarily backend, where no outside adoption or introspection was necessarily needed. And this is where the call to action comes in. So I think the industry, myself included, and the others in this room from industry, need your help with product market fit in specific. So what does that mean, and how can we address it? Okay. So the ones who need the help most in the industry, or anyone working on hard product market fit problems, you can look at these as being like the existential risk to the success of their launch. In startups, this is earlier in the fundraising process. So if it usually starts with a seed round-ish, and then it gets to an alphabet soup of Series A, Series B, and so on. But generally, product market fit is being established during seed and Series A rounds. So if you want to find a partner, look for the earlier startups. Valuations are usually lower at this point as well. If you want to find them, you can attend pitch sessions. You can network with investors like myself. You can also network with founders. They're usually very intertwined with the startup community in any specific city. If you want to partner with industry, look for high visibility and long horizon launches. I think most of this room is already aware of like a lot of those big initiatives that are already happening in your research areas of expertise. So just make sure you have connections with the people in the industry that are working. I'm sure they would be very happy to brainstorm on ways to collaborate. So additional mechanisms for collaboration. So there's, let's see, about 3 of these and some other models. So embedded research programs. If many of you might have actually worked in these, others of you are earlier in your research careers. This is when a researcher spends 6 to 12 months embedded inside of an industry team. It works because you're embedded, you get real access to real data, the real scale, the real operational constraints that your partners are working under in industry. And the industry gets rapid innovation without a full-time hire commitment. So an example of this is both Google and Apple have used the visiting researcher models for DP infrastructure work, including rapport and iOS analytics. Okay, up next is publication and deployment pipelines. So this is a explicit track in conferences, such as SOUPS or PETS, where accepted papers must include an industry partner and a field deployment plan. So this works because it forces early alignment on product feasibility, and it turns theoretical breakthroughs into measurable impact. So PETS is the example of this that I'm aware of. They have a real-world deployment track. Up next is jointly funded research labs. These are long-term academic industry labs with multi-year funding. Why does this work? It allows deeper work to happen on many of the messy bits, things like utility versus privacy trade-offs and deployment monitoring. And we give researchers publication freedom while still solving industry-defined problems. So an example of this is Microsoft Research, their collaboration with universities on DP to glean insights from LinkedIn salary data. 3 other models which aren't as effective at product market fit specifically, but you might be working with regardless. So shared open source tooling. This basically forces you through shared code to collaborate and have a single vision and know what's working and know what's not. OpenDP being a great example in this space. There's also the concept of challenge competitions. So we have like the NIST privacy engineering challenges, for example. And this is a good way to collaborate with your own kind of tiger team of strength. And that can include industry partners. And standard bodies as well, not necessarily to find product market fit, but primarily to have a committee that is basically looking to see that everyone represented is having a satisfactory outcome from the standard that is being generated. And W3C privacy community groups are the example I would call out here. With that, we can move over to Q&A.